I am not there in person yet, but I am there virtually, at least for the moment, um, with a brother I had the pleasure of meeting when I was in Northern California, NorCal. It's SoCal and NorCal, right? Is that how it goes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Northern California.
Is
It's
it?
a big
And
state, so we have to cut it
does
up.
that count?
And there's Central California.
Well, what is San Francisco? Is that northern
Hmm?
or central, or
Yeah, it's northern. I think northern.
it's a very it's a very beautiful city, but I could have done with some fewer hills. It's just a nightmare getting to the Grand Lodge. Oh my God.
Exactly the last hill when you're coming from the bottom up. That's the killer right there. The second
Oh,
or the last one, you're like, all right, I can do this. And you see the last one, and you're like, all right, kind of looks the same. And then you start walking, and midway through it, it's like you're like going like this, and you're like, oh man, all right, let's do it.
well, I never seen anybody cut steps into like a hill before.
Yeah, and that's the well, actually, the on the right, it's got it. On the left side, I don't think it has. It's just the sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah, there's a sidewalk and then
Yeah.
there's like hills and
So
I kind
were you staying below, or were you staying like on the top?
I was staying below. I was staying below and it was not cool, Grand Lodge. You could have moved your Grand Lodge somewhere else for me. It's not easy in a wheelchair getting up that hill. That was insanity.
But it's a huge building. It's a beautiful, huge building. And did you see that lodge room that they built?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Actually, I was talking to you before, offline. I took some pictures of it for the Instagram. It's a gorgeous building. It's probably, I mean, it's just incredible, and for the size of it, like I don't know if I've seen as many ornate and kind of beautiful Grand Lodge buildings as that one. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that lodge room and where the conventions floor was just like built like 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I think. Yeah, like it's brand new. So it's kind of trippy the the decor, right? The way they laid it out. And it's not your ordinary like California lodge. It's like this lodge of the future, what they kind of thought might look like. But but it's also kind of timeless at the same time, right? I tell people if the Star Trek ship had a lodge in it, this is the kind of lodge it probably would have inside that ship.
Yeah, it's amazing. It looks like you're right. It doesn't look like any lodge that you've seen, but yet it's still very recognizable for what it is, right? That's the key to it. You recognize what it is, but it's fascinating to be in and to look at.
Yeah.
But we should probably get talking about you, and what you were doing at the Grand Lodge annual communication, and kind of how I got in touch with you. Um, so yeah, so worshipful brother Dago Rodriguez.
Yes,
Should have checked.
Dago Rodriguez. I'm
Okay. Should have checked to make sure I got your name pronounced right.
good. No, no, that's everybody does it. Trust me. I'm immune to it now. I'm the current lodge master of the Southern California Research Lodge. I'm a two-time past master of South Pasadena Masonic Lodge. Helped start their educational um, degrees there, and also the Illumination Lecture Series, which is an almost monthly lecture series that the lodge puts up. And I am also the managing editor of the Fraternal Review magazine, which is what the Southern California Research Lodge publishes 11 months out of the year.
So let's start with the Fraternal Review, because that's what you were focused on at the annual communication. That's how I met you, and what we were talking about. And you had some books and some articles by some individuals who I've had on the podcast before, John Bizak, for example. What is the Fraternal Review, and how can Masons or non-Masons, for that matter, go about finding it?
Yeah. Well, every year we set up a booth at the Grand Lodge promoting the new issues of the Fraternal Review and any new books that have been released by Masons or about Masonry. And we are enlisting subscribers or renewing subscriptions at Grand Lodge. The Fraternal Review, well, the Research Lodge was chartered in 1952, around November 1952. So its the first official year was in 1953. And their whole thing was about, creating Masonic education. And before that, there weren't any research lodges in California. And I think, I mean, my personal opinion, the research lodge was an outgrowth, because in the blue lodges, they were more social and networking and not a lot into the educational aspect of Masonry. So whenever a Mason was interested in education, the Blue Lodge kind of really dismissed it in a sense and said, well, you know, we'll it's limited, we'll figure it out. But there wasn't that corner for it. So I think that demand was growing. And then the Grand Lodge all of a sudden chartered 4 research lodges in the state of California. Out of those 4, I think 2 are still around, and there was 2 others that opened them that got chartered through the course of that time. But it became this outgrowth to focus it more on Masonic education and Masonic research. So if you did want to further your study in Masonry on that educational sort of level, now a Blue Lodge could say, well, why don't you go join the research lodge now that you're a Master Mason and you have all these questions? And that's how the research lodges in California got started. And the Southern California Research Lodge, from its inception, was very adamant of putting together papers every year from Masons around the state. So
Sorry, before we go any further, I want to go back to a phrase you use. It pops up a lot in this podcast and in just conversations in lodge, conversation amongst Masons. Heard a lot of Grand Lodge. You know, the phrase or the term Masonic education. Can you expand? How would you define, like, what is Masonic education to you?
To me, it's really understanding the Masonry more, right? Like the ritual, the symbolism, the allegories. It's one thing when you're getting your degrees. Think about I think about the time when I got my degrees, how impressed I was with all the stuff that these officers had to memorize and the ritual of it, the actions, the movements of it. But I was so blown away by that it almost went over my head when a lodge master is reciting a 10 to 20 page lecture to you. You're not really, and that's if they do it like flawlessly and correctly, you're not really going to sponge all that information. So what do you do with it? What's the purpose of hearing all this information if you're just going to flush it down the toilet and it's going to go over your head? And then the whole, what was the purpose of it? So you want to go back and revisit the ritual, the allegories, the symbols, and understand how they connect to you and the world around you, and how you make these teachings matter, right? If you're going to take a good man and make him better, how are you going to do that without walking him through and implementing an educational sort of course and guides where he can grow and understand what he went through and then apply it into his daily existence in and out of the lodge? And that's the powerful thing about the Masonic philosophy that sadly was brushed under the rug for many years over the idea of let's be social, let's network, and this is what now I think Grand Lodges have gotten more savvy and paid attention to their data. And they're looking at what keeps a Mason involved in a lodge and active. And if there's nothing cementing him there except the idea of how to barbecue a hamburger, they're not going to last. They're not going to stick around much longer because they got what they kind of were there to get. And now life continues and they go into other chapters of their lives. But if you implement an educational program where they're learning that there's a lot of layers to the degrees of Masonry that can be implemented into their daily lives to make their existence within themselves and the world around them better, why wouldn't you do that? You're doing a disservice to Masonry by not educating your candidates and Master Masons at your lodges. And I think this is where Masonic education needs to become one of the important cornerstones that every lodge implements as they evolve through the years. Because if they don't, then you go into that whole idea, well, we don't have enough members. Let's do 1 day, 3-degree rituals because we got to get as many guys as we can in. And what does that get you? right? Quantity over quality. I would rather be in a lodge with 50 solid guys that are committed to it, that understand Masonry, than in a lodge with 600 members that I only see 5 show up, every month. And I don't know the other 255, right? Like, it's like, that's, I think, the place where we've gotten to, where we want a more well-rounded quality experience. And that's not to say that we don't enjoy the social, the network part of Masonry, and it's an important part of it as well. I mean, that's the other thing that binds it, but is it sustaining enough to keep you there, running and serving your lodge and the community around you? Probably not. Probably not.
Is there room, or is there a trying to think of the word, is there an appeal? Does Masonic education hold an appeal for non-Masons? And to what extent do you think that non-Masons can engage in Masonic education? Like, the classic example would be this podcast, well, any podcast, I hope that Masons watching it and Masons get something from it that improves their Masonic journey. But I'm also, even if for no other reason than a purely pragmatic reason, I recognize there are far more non-Masons in the world than there are Masons. And I hope that they are also watching this podcast and get something from it. In the same way, not everybody who enjoys music or even music documentaries is a musician. I mean, so I guess the question is, and from the fraternal review point of view, are you focused on appealing to Freemasons only, or do you think that the information contained within the publication can be of benefit to non-Masons as well?
It's a lot of questions, Cameron. First, I would address that curiosity when you join a lodge is what has people intrigued and interested, and then it becomes a matter of fulfilling that curiosity, right? Once you become a Mason, if you show up to the lodge and you go to your first stated meeting, which is my first stated meeting, this is where I'm going to find out the truth and all the secrets, right? And then you realize, it's a reading of the minutes and arguing about what we're going to pay for next month. And that just completely is a killer to many. And then after 2 or 3 of those, they stop coming. Why do I want to go to a business meeting that I can't really even, I'm not an officer yet, so how much sway and say do I have? I'm still learning my motions. It's interesting, but it doesn't become something that holds it together. But if you add an educational element, if you have young Masons involved in helping in committees within their own lodges, then it becomes more of this give and take situation between the lodge and the candidate in the growth of the lodge as a whole. And now they're more involved. They're getting their feet wet and creating a history and a legacy for their own lodge that they're part of. And so when you don't have that, I think you lose that membership and that interest in Masonry. And Masonic education, I think, and the curiosity for Masonry, yes, it's open to many, especially with the Southern California Research Lodge and the Fraternal Review. It's not just for Masons only. It's open for anybody in the public. I think we have maybe like a dozen subscribers that I know are not Masons. And that's interesting to me, that they are intrigued by the Masonic philosophy and the themes and subjects that we publish that connect to Masonry. And the whole goal about the Fraternal Review is that we try to show you how Masonry connects to many other aspects around us, and not just Masonry in, within the lodge ritual per se. And like there was an issue, the tarot issue that we put out last year, and on social media, it always has its way. People were commenting, well, this is not Masonry. I've been a Mason for 30 years and I've never seen a tarot deck in my lodge. So what are you trying to say here? And my response was like, well, why don't you first not judge a book by its cover and really read the issue to understand that we never say that Masonry, the tarot is Masonry. We're saying that there were a lot of aspects of Masonry that parallel tarot cards, and also creators of like the BOTA, Builders of Adam and that's a group that studies just the tarot cards, and that group was created by a brother Mason. So how can we look the other way and not say, well, that's interesting that brother saw this connection with this, that he created a whole group, a national group based off of that. So it isn't Masonry, but it has definite connections to Masonry. And that's what we enjoy at the Fraternal Review, is that we can get to explore these connections, far-reaching connections that Masonry has in the world around us. And that's why it's open to the public to read. There's nothing secret that we publish in the issue that you can't share with friends and family that are not Masons. We encourage you to share that information. But yeah, that's how the public curiosity can be met by a Grand Lodge sanctioned research lodge to the public. Did I miss another question of yours?
No. It's interesting.
The curiosity, right? I go back to like, I helped Johnny Royal with the movie Illuminated, the true story of the Illuminati. And it's got like 2 million views on Amazon. And there's this existing curiosity of secret societies that still intrigues people, and they want to learn more about it. And that is what I think also gets people to want to look into or peek into Masonry as well.
Well, that's interesting. The way the general public interacts with Freemasonry within the last, I'd say, 20 to 30 years, it's really fascinating. Kind of the manner, the way they think about it, the way they interact with it, as opposed to in the past. I think it seems to me that the secret, esoteric kind of woo side of it seems to have, at least based on my research, really increased in the way people consider the craft, as opposed to those great Masonic boom periods in the 1920s and 1950s, when it seemed like it wasn't considered a secret society exactly, or it wasn't considered. It was a part of the community in the same way the PTA was part of the community, right? Like in Windsor, we had, the worshipful master of a lodge would be congratulated in the paper. Congratulations, worshipful brother, on your election to Great Western Lodge's worship. It's a very different thing, and I'm not sure. I just personally struggle with it. I'm not sure what's better, or maybe better is not the right term. I tend to think, just how I grew up in the craft, I've always kind of viewed Freemasonry first and foremost as a civic community group, where the emphasis should be not on the esoteric and the secret side of it. That's something that is done just as a way to bond brethren together, and a way to maintain regularity in the craft. But I've always focused more on the community aspect of it, trying to be open to the public. But it seems that there's a real push amongst some circles, and some I've had on the podcast, to focus on the esotericism and kind of being apart from society, which I don't know if that makes any sense. But I guess from your perspective, from the Fraternal Review, like what is the proper balance between maintaining kind of a mystical element and being a part of the communities in which a temple is located and a lodge is located?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because the way I'm kind of seeing it, it's like there is this idea that look of understanding yourself, knowing thyself, going into a deeper analysis of who you are, why you're here, and what is your purpose of being here, right? And I think when people discuss Masonry on on esoteric terms, they are looking into that deeper aspect of how it relates into their inner selves, which in a kind of way shaves that whole community civic duty aspect off, but not entirely. I think once you understand what your duty is to the world around you, and that is to serve others to make them better, then it trickles into the community and how you can serve your community to make it better around you, right? And to build is to love, and that's, I think, where you start to feel more confident in that aspect, that you're not here just for selfish reasons. You're here to help. We're all one, we're all connected, and we're here to help improve the society around us as a whole. And I think sometimes many have to dive into that esoteric sort of introspection and time to understand that. And then once they get that, they realize, all right, how do I spread this out now into the community around me? So I think Masonry is taking that step inward deeper now than it ever has before. It's almost like a new renaissance of it, that let me see how I can help my inner soul and balance and put it in a harmonious place before I can start going out there and creating harmony in the world around me. And that's very interesting, because you're absolutely right. Like we've definitely have noticed that. And I mean, we would have never been able to publish like a tarot and Masonry issue 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, without getting a bunch of, hate mail and getting stripped down to like, why are you doing this? Why are you misinforming us or people around us? But now I think people are becoming more aware and open that there's something that needs to be addressed within ourselves that then can be addressed in the community around them. And lodges are supposed to be civic grounds to help out the community. I mean, they pretty much, many lodges started cities. South Pasadena, for example, they built the lodge the same year the city was created. And the first master of our lodge was was the first city mayor, which is interesting, right? So they were definitely integral parts of the community, and through the ages, it's lost that grasp. And I think there is going to be that churn to get us back into the community and get more people involved to say, look, the lodge is here not as that scary secret building, but as that open building to help the community. Just let us work together and let us know what you need from us, basically. Because now a lot of lodges are transient, right? Now not everybody that belongs to the lodge in your city lives in your city. They live in different areas that travel in and out. So they're not that aware of the needs and concerns of the city, or have that grasp with the city to be able to say, hey, the school needs this. Hey, the officers are having this fundraiser. Hey, so that's what we get. I believe we are going to, we need more of that, and we're going to go back into that, because that's going to be the next step, I think.
It's interesting talking about that next step. Especially when I look behind you, and one of the posters that you got up there, and this is something I haven't had a chance to review it yet, but I know we talked about it, is the Fight Club and Freemasonry. Because the interesting thing about that whole movie, well, it was a book first, which I haven't read, and then I saw the movie. I never understood that movie until kind of talking to you a little bit more about it, because it always just seemed to me like there's a bunch of very whiny men who I was like, they just complain a lot. Like if they just went to the gym, they'd be a lot happier. But it seems like the whole
sounds like a lodge sometimes, huh?
Well, I suppose, but I think the thing that you got at with your answer is, the you said, to build is to love. In Fight Club, you see this desire to apparently, at the end of everything's getting blown up, to destroy. And a lot of that comes from not having any type of, the men in that movie, not having any type of healthy relationships and sense of support. And when you don't have that, when you feel isolated, how easy it is to become, violent and angry and complaining, and then you start beating people up in a parking lot. I don't know if that's kind of where the Fight Club Masonic connection comes in, but that's just what I get from talking to you. Is this, Fight Club was almost like a warning of this is what happens when men feel isolated, and it becomes easy for them to, fall under the spell of, bad actors like, well, Brad Pitt, really Edward Norton character type of thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the parallel with it is the need for positive role models in our lives. And many of us, many generations now, haven't had that masculine role model in their lives to look up to and be guided by, to help them create a better understanding and how to serve themselves in a positive way and the world around them. So it's created a generation of many, egocentric, materialistic driven individuals that now are seeking that spiritual enlightenment, and they don't know where to turn. If it's not going to be church or their religious beliefs, they go into a group like the Freemasons, to see, well, how can this make me feel better? And many of them I find are still in search of their identity when they come and join lodges, candidates that visit our lodges. They want to be almost guided into being told, like social media in a way does, like, well, this is the way you should live and govern your life. And that's interesting too. That puts a higher responsibility on Masonry to now really deliver and understand what their role is now, and what the call of Masonry could turn into when you have candidates coming into your lodge. So going back to that idea, if you don't have a solid educational program at your lodge to help them understand what being a civic-minded individual is, right? Then you're going to get into trouble. Then you're going to create little anarchist Masons like Fight Club, and you're going to start using, because Fight Club kind of has similar parallels like the Masonic philosophy, but now the characters in Fight Club use it for not the greater good, right? Although in their warped mind they are, but that's how it can go either way. It's like you're in the fork, and either it can be good or it can go bad, and having the appropriate role models and leadership steers you in that good direction to serve better, to be a better contributor, and not get warped into a whole materialistic existence that you could skew into a whole different direction with the guys that will Masonry taught me this, right?
Yeah, well, that's always one of the tricks about any organization, I suppose, but especially Freemasonry. It can be easily misinterpreted in a way, online, on social media, in a way that other organizations can't. I think we're more prone and susceptible to that, because especially the nature of, like, you can attend one meeting, you can get your degree, you can be initiated, have a card in your pocket, never show up again to a meeting, and then just go online and say, I'm a Freemason, and blast the crap in fraternity. And you may get kicked out for unmasonic conduct, which I've never heard of it happening. I'm sure it does, but there's no way for the general public to judge, like, a good Mason versus like a shit Mason. And so what happens is the shitty Masons can say whatever they want. And you see that online sometimes. I think that's a challenge that's unique to Freemasonry, because, musicians don't have it. Like, if somebody goes online and starts talking ill about the music industry, you can tell pretty quickly, is this guy legit or not legit? And all you have to do is, okay, play a song. And if you can't play a song, it's like, well, no, you're just a bad musician. With Freemasonry, it's very hard for people to judge where the information is coming from and whether this is a valid source of information or not a valid source.
Yeah, I think that there
That's
is.
one of the benefits of fraternal review, right? Is that it's a trusted source. Things are vetted. It's not just anybody. Just because somebody's been a Mason for 20 years, that doesn't mean he gets to write something. And, if he's been a Mason for 20 years, but only attended one meeting and just paid his dues every year, that doesn't mean he's, going to get an article in the Fraternal
For sure,
Review.
and that's happened before. That happens, during the course of the year, we'll have articles submitted that on the surface sound like a good idea, and then once we read it, we're like, oh, this needs more fleshing out, or they're really missing the point. And some of these are by seasoned Masons, so we do vet them carefully because we just don't want to, misinform people, right? I mean, we could tease them with a cover, but then it's like once you get into the meat and potatoes and really look at the issue and study it, read it, then you realize how it truly does connect in that positive way with the fraternity. And I think that's important because there was somewhere online I was reading about how somebody suggested, we should have a group that vets everything that gets published Masonically and endorse it, that it's legitimate and not somebody's mad tangent. Because everybody seems to be publishing things nowadays, and some of them are just weird tangents that might not have a place in Masonry. And we should warn people like, look, if you read this, this is this person's point of view and opinion, but it's not really based off, our fraternal aspects. And is he even a legit Mason? Is he a clandestine Mason that's writing this? And a brother that just became an apprentice gets a hold of this book and they read it and they're like, oh, so this is what I'm in store for. So how do you decipher what's legitimate and what's not that's getting published on the craft? And that was an interesting perspective and view that this brother actually brought up on the social circle that I was reading about. And I go, yeah, but that would be hard and impossible. Not impossible, but just really hard. But it's worth thinking about, right? Like, how do I vet Masonic sources, Masonic literature, or anything that gets published to know that it's from a legitimate source? And that's, you just got to do your research, right? You have to do your due diligence and say, well, who is this author? Where is he from? Has he been involved in the craft, or is he just a spectator? And that's how I approach everything that comes my way that's Masonically related. But many others don't. Many people are very gullible and will digest it and think it might be the way we do things in Blue Lodge Masonry.
I mean, yeah, that is, that's not just a Masonic challenge, but you see that with social media all the time, right? Trying to make sure sources are vetted and correct and accurate. But I think Freemasonry does have, that is a unique problem to Freemasonry, just how, because the average person won't understand what it means to be a brother versus a worshipful brother versus a right worshipful brother. It is an interesting problem, but that's why things like, not to do the cheap plug, but things like Fraternal Review are so important, right? Because again, there is a vetting process, and you can kind of trust the information for both a Mason and a non-Mason who's getting it. Can trust the information is being checked out before it hits the page, before it goes out into the world. So with that being said, what are some things that Fraternal Review is working on moving forward? Some of the next issues you have coming out and the next topics.
We're working on the brotherly love, relief, and truth issues. There are 3 separate issues that will be published separately, but we're going to do a box limited edition collection of them. Probably by Christmas it'll come out. So that's we're looking forward to that. That 2020 annual we just published. You saw it at Grand Lodge. All 11 of the 2020 issues are in the annual, and you could find this on our website at theresearchlodge.com. You could also download all our past digital issues at theresearchlodge.com. We don't have that. Some hardcover issues or physical copies we have available, but not all of them. So sometimes the annual is the best bet because you get all 11 issues in it. And then next year, we just finalized the themes for next year. And the first one's going to be on fringe masonry, which I don't know a lot about yet. And it's going to be guest edited by author Angel Millar. It's going to edit that first issue. So we look forward to what he collects, which I think I'll be seeing at the middle of next month, and how he approaches that topic. And then the 2021 annual, maybe in the spring of next year, will be available. And then in the beginning of the year, we'll reveal the 11 themes that we will be publishing in 2022. And we on the website, we open it up. Like if we do an issue on the Kabbalah and you are a Mason that has written an article on Masonry and the Kabbalah, you can submit it through the website for review, but it has specific dates. So you have to really go to the website, look at the themes. And usually it's 2 to 3 months before that issue is actually published that we need to get your article to read it over, vet it, and see if it fits in the whole scheme of that topic. So any Mason and non-Mason can contribute an article if they connect to the theme of that month and they submit it with enough time for us to review it. And if you can't make it, we'll just apologize and say it's not going to be able to get in this time, but keep trying. It's only 16 pages, sometimes 20. So it's a tight little publication. So their space really is limited to some extent, but we do it so you have enough to read, but don't feel like it's a heavy burden of your time to digest. It's just enough information for you to open your mind up. And if you want to further explore it, you can see the annotations and go back and get the larger versions of the articles, the manuscript or the book that was published before to get the full scope of that article that might have inspired you.
Why did what made you guys, what made the Fraternal Review decide to center their issues around topics and have a different topic each month, as opposed to like a more general kind of, like a podcast format where it's just a multitude of topics that all kind of relate to Freemasonry one or the other? What is it about specific topics that you decide to go with?
Well, the Fraternal Review, when it started in the early 50s, was just publishing an article or two that they would send all their members. Like, this is the article we've chosen for this month. And every quarter, I believe, they would send one article out. Then by the 80s, they were actually printing several different articles, but most of them were snippets from other research lodges or books, right? That they thought, oh, this is an interesting tale. They say that here. So out of Manly P. Hall's book, we'll grab these 2 paragraphs. If you want to read more, this is the Manly P. Hall book we got it out of. And they would literally send you pages like this, black and white pages in the mail, folded like this. And this was your Fraternal Review for the month. And they were doing that until 2015, where we decided to rebrand the whole thing and make it a colorful 16-page magazine with a focus, because that's what it was missing when you were getting these pages. It was just a bunch of like diatribes, basically, like this. It had no cohesion for that, we thought. So this whole new generation came in and said, well, let's give it a new light. It's been around for so many years. And if we create this, colorful sort of magazine, people will be more interested in it, and its focus will be more centered on a topic. So if I have brotherly love, I can be at the lodge as lodge master and say, hey, Brother Cameron, for Masonic Education, why don't you pick an article from the brotherly love issue and read it at our stated meeting? And, some of these articles are from 1 paragraph to up to 2 pages long. So it's a good little 5-10 minute education thing you could do at your lodge through the service of this publication. Or you could print the article giving everybody their due credit into your trestle board or even your website. So the topics became the thing that anchored our monthly issues in collecting the material to publish in the magazine. So now we said brotherly love. All right, let's see what articles can we find that Masonically connect to brotherly love that we can publish in this issue. And Star Wars and Freemasonry, like the Force and the Light, like what articles can we find, or can we have other Masonic scholars write about that can connect to this idea of the force and the light and how it relates to the Star Wars lore. And we tap like I think it was Tim Hogan, Michael Jarzabek, like these Masonic scholars who were really intrigued by that idea and were almost in love with the edginess that we were taking and actually being serious about publishing an issue like this. And we did, and it became one of the most read issues of that year, and it continues to be a very popular read issue. And this is how it's a cool way to introduce Masonic education to a new generation of Masons and non-Masons from this whole pop culture sort of angle, which we find is just as popular as the esoteric and the symbolic article issues that we put together.
Do you find that your submissions come primarily from the United States, or I guess where do your submissions primarily come from?
The United States, yeah. Most
Any
of them.
any submissions from Canada, Mexico, or even across?
Well, we actually did have the Flower of Life issue that I believe came out in either 2017 or 2018 was by one of your Grand Lodge Grand Lodge officers, I believe. We were at the Masonic Restoration Foundation Symposium in up north in Canada when they had it there that year. And he did a beautiful talk on the connection between the Flower of Life and Masonry. And we were just in love with it. And we were like, see, this would be a great issue if we can find enough articles to fill the magazine. And we spoke with him. He goes, oh yeah, my research I got a bunch of articles I could connect to. And that's how that topic was born the following year. And he agreed to do it. But he's the biggest one that we've had contribute a whole issue to. And he actually was invited to come and speak at our lodge at South Pasadena the following year on that very same topic because his talk was that good.
Are you finding, to what extent is your Fraternal Review, downloaded and virtual versus is there still like a desire for actual physical paper copies? Are you sending out a lot of magazines, or do you find it's mostly electronic?
We have about 1,100 subscribers, and I'll say about half of them. Yeah, it's almost half and half. They get the physical issue and the digital issue because we offer 3 tiers right now. You could either do the digital issue for $27 a year, or you could do the physical copy for $37 a year, or both the physical and the digital for $47 a year. But now with everything that's happening in the world, the cost of printing, it's going up. The ink is costing a little bit more. So we've been in talks of like, we might need to adjust the physical price just to meet the cost of the publishing of the physical issue. But we get more people appreciating the annuals actually are building themselves up and doing better now than single issues is what we're finding as well. Like there's more people getting it all in one book and not just the individual issues, I guess, for space and travel purposes. But yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking, do you know to what extent are the subscribers, especially for the physical copies, but even the electronic, to what extent are they like actual people for themselves versus Masonic temples, Masonic lodges, people getting it for their temple or for their lodge? Because I'm just thinking, even in Windsor, we have a librarian, Worship Brother Jason Deirdre, who I've talked to about the library at the Windsor Masonic Temple. But, something like the Fraternal Review would be a great addition to the library to have. Do you have a lot of Masonic lodges and temples subscribing and then sharing the information or making it?
We have an actual lodge subscription for $90. A lodge can subscribe for the year, and we send them 3 physical monthly issues, 3 copies every month. to their lodge. We don't do a digital one just because it might be a little easier for them to share it and to keep our costs intact. We don't do a digital lodge subscription, but we do a physical lodge subscription. It's not as high, but we have a few lodges that subscribe to it and collect it. And I know I want to say Washington, D.C., Ohio, and there was another one. There's three research libraries that get a physical issue for their archives from us as well. But yeah, I think if somebody like a library or a research lodge wants to subscribe to it, they can as well and get issues.
Well, Jason, if you're watching this, the link's in the description. It'd be a great addition to the library.
How is the Windsor library? Is it like a full-blown Masonic library, or is it part of a Grand Lodge? Like, how is that laid out?
Well, so the Windsor Masonic Temple, so there is the Grand Lodge Library, which Grand Lodge of Canada, the province of Ontario. I would strongly suggest you look at getting it as well. But then in Windsor, the Windsor Masonic Temple has a kind of a smaller library where Masons can talk to Brother J.C. Deirdre and check out a book, bring it back. But it's its own, it's kind of its own part of the temple, but not connected to Grand Lodge. But yeah, I mean, the more material you have and this is for any Masonic temple. I mean, even if your Masonic temple doesn't itself have a library per se, you're going to have a bookshelf somewhere. You're going to have a space with some Masonic books, hopefully. We've all seen, almost every single one of them has the same set of books that every other Masonic. Why not add a fraternal review? Make it something interesting.
The standards, the Mackey standards.
Yeah, standards.
And moral and dogmas.
You got that. You got Pike. You got the whole thing. So, and gives the guys something to check into. When they're or get there early, whatever it is. I think that'd be really cool. And then even at the smallest level, at the lodge, if you're the lodge secretary or lodge education officer, right? This is. I mean, how easy is it to, if you have the fraternal review, to find stuff to talk about and stuff, the pop culture connection, Fight Club, Star Wars, stuff that guys perhaps don't always think of as being Masonic education.
Or sometimes, like when we were at the Grand Lodge where I saw you, there was a brother that came up and saw the Matrix issue, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I always knew there was a connection, but nobody believed me." And then he got the issue and took it home with him. So that's kind of cool too, right? When they make these discoveries that you were thinking about it on that level, and then there's somebody out there that actually was thinking on the same level as you, and now you connect the two, and that's kind of cool also. And we're open to ideas. If any brother out there is publishing prone and into Masonic education, and they have researched a topic that they think could fit a fraternal review, email us, send it our way, and we would definitely take it into consideration. We've done that a lot more now that we've opened it up. 2-3 years after we started the rebranding of it in the magazine form, we started to open it up to guest editors, especially Masonic scholars that had already done research. For example, like a brother Chuck Dunning, his contemplative Freemasonry book, that he has that research there, so he can actually easily input more information into a 16-page magazine, which and you only really need like 8 pages worth of material to fill it, because we have our cover, our back end, the table of contents, and all that other stuff. So it's really just like 8 to 9 pages of content that you need to supply to fill up a whole magazine. So if you've been researching a topic and you have a bunch of different references and articles that you can collect into an issue, let us know. And if it's exciting to us and timely, we'd be more than happy to have you come on as a guest editor and put a whole issue together.
And we mentioned the website, links in the description, but the email address, like how do people get in touch with you if they want to either make a submission, suggest a topic?
Just go through the website, contact us, and there'll be an email right there that you could just send information to us. And usually I get carbon copied on that information as well.
Perfect. And more generally, before we finish, this is something I've been talking about with all my guests for the last little bit. You know, you are worshipful master. With How have you found in California, in Southern California in particular, the return to lodge? Um, I know that in Ontario, it's just getting started. Um, we haven't had an in-person meeting yet. We may start in November, some lodges. Has there been in California like any hesitation about restarting, any nerves? I can say the communication in San Francisco is very well attended. So what's it been like on your end?
Well, you know, before we opened, everybody was getting excited. I can't wait to go back to lodge. I miss all my brothers. And we thought, oh, wow, like it's going to be the resurrection of Freemasonry, resurgence, you know, but it, it wasn't. I think we opened and it was the same group that is always showing up, kept showing up. And that's fine. I think, again, it was always, you know, quality over quantity. But I think the pandemic and the closures really made people reassess and reevaluate what took priority in their lives. And to many, still Masonry is part of that routine that they want to have in their lives, which is a great thing. But there were the precautionary measures. You know, it's always on and off. Everybody wear your mask. No, you don't have to wear your mask. If it's a private or club, then and if it has less than 100 people in it, we leave it up to the organizers to decide how much they want to mandate that. And then at one point it was going to be, you have to be fully vaccinated to enter the lodge room or tested before you come to the lodge. Every time you come to the lodge, that then fell off. So the information has just, our elders, especially our older brethren, I think we are being more careful with, because they, you know, they're more susceptible to this. And they have sort of they're being more picky and choosy what they're coming to the lodge, and avoiding the social gatherings a little more than the more like meetings or educational classes where there's less people there. But that's really the only big difference that I've noticed from our lodge, is that it's just a little more selective from our older elders on what they want to attend, and how careful we're being. You know, we're still masking up at the lodge level, but you know, vaccines are not fully required to enter your lodge, or proof that you're negative either. So you still have to have a hand sanitizer and a mask out there, just to have everybody be more aware and protect each other from this, you know.
That's interesting, because at Grand Lodge, I know that proof of vaccine was required.
But remember, that wasn't even the Grand Lodge's idea. That was the city of San Francisco that was enforcing that with every building in the city. So they had to abide by that city code and ordinance. And that's why they had the whole thing with the wristbands. You have to show proof of full vaccination. And, you know, I mean, you were there, but I mean, we had half of the vendors that we usually have there. Usually there's about 1,100 Masons there. I think we had like 800, even though 1,300 registered, you know. So it was good to see everybody back, and it was little busy, but I've seen it busier. It definitely has been busier at Grand Lodge before.
Do you think I mean, it's so hard to tell, right? To what extent do you think, as we move away from things like vaccine requirements, and just as the pandemic, knock on wood, we're at the home stretch, as it recedes further and further into the past, do you see, at least for the bigger events like Grand Lodge, returning to the numbers of before?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Grand Lodge is always like a big event, and yeah, you for sure. I think it'll rise to that level. I'm sure. Absolutely. And I think our social events at our lodges will also be busier and more heavily attended that they are so far this year, just because everybody's still trying to get a grasp of it and let this sort of balance itself out. But I think once that happens, I think we'll go back to where we were before the pandemic in the numbers, and then seeing how much of being isolated or quarantined really affected other men in wanting to join something that could be better in their lives. and that being Masonry, right? Like those that were curious, are they going to finally take that step and come visit the lodge and maybe join the lodge, or are they not? That's going to be the telling repercussion of the aftermath of this pandemic in the years to follow, for sure. I'll be watching for that. I'll be seeing that, analyzing that.
I think many will, myself included, and so it'll be perhaps have you back on the podcast in a year to talk about kind of what you have seen in the past year and whether and just what the results have been and what you have seen in terms of applications, attendance, membership retention, all that jazz.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be great to kind of do an like a update in a way, like, because I mean, this is very historic, and like I think I was talking to somebody the other day at a dinner about it, about how our future generations are going to turn to us and ask us how we dealt with this and how we handled it and how things changed after it. And we should be very cognizant of it, right? Be very aware of how it's changing, so we could be historians of this time frame and better articulate it to the younger generations that are in 10 years are going to be Masons at our lodge, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a fraternal review about it at some point. About
we actually discussed it. We were going to do one on the pandemic and how it changed, the way we did business and Masonry and all this stuff. But many thought it was too early. They were like, let's wait for 3 years maybe and then reflect on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if we'll be able to know
Yeah,
the full effect of it for at least 3 or 4 years, because
not more maybe. It's like that will be it would be a good topic, right? Like a good issue to sort of hold a marker on what happened historically, and then go back and revisit that issue 5 years after it's published to see how far we've gone from that, or if we completely have forgotten about it already, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff I suppose is pretty. You can look at things like membership. Like there's some easy numbers, right? You can look at retention, how many demanded or just didn't pay their dues and got suspended. How many applications were received by lodges, and then how many of those applications resulted in members. But there's those numbers only tell a very small part of the bigger story, right? Like how many of those applications became members that became active members. That's a few years to know. How many of the members that were lost, never attended lodge anyways. Were kind of empty aprons. It's an interesting. Yeah, I think it's going to take a little while to fully understand exactly what the effect was.
Right
And
now,
it'd be a fascinating article.
yeah, right now I just think it's trying to find its balance, and that's why it'd be interesting to see what happens when your lodges open up in the next 3 to 5 months, 3 to 6 months. Kind of gauge it and see how different it was from before the pandemic to when you open, and how easy you're going back to the business of work. Because we fully open in July here in California, our lodges, so it's barely going to hit not even 6 months. And we're just starting to, implement the social events more openly at our lodge near the end of this year. And we didn't really have anything going on except for degrees, catching up on degrees when we first opened. So it'll be interesting how the beginning of next year starts to level itself off, especially since it will feel like it's going to be a fulfilled year in 2022, because we get to start during the Masonic fiscal year at our lodge, which is January, with a new master, a new calendar, and a bunch of new events happening. That it should make it exciting, but we'll see how receptive the brothers are to it.
I agree. It should be exciting. Hope that's the attitude you want, right? That hopefully people are coming back with excitement about it, and maybe not taking it for granted. In Ontario, right? How many So in Ontario, lodges were suspended from in-person meetings as of March 2020. So how many Masons didn't show up in February of 2020, thinking I'll just show up in March, right? I can miss a meeting, it won't be a big deal, right? Like, the worst thing Freemasonry can be is like, the side chick. Right? That's the last thing you want to be. It's just the thing that you go to, but has no expectations placed on you, right? And that's my hope. I don't know whether it'll happen or not, but my hope is, Masons maybe are more aware of the importance of attendance and don't take it for granted that it will always be there. It won't always be there,
You're
especially if you're
right.
not there.
But I think that also puts a lot more pressure on your officers and senior officers that dictate what's going to happen at the lodge to deliver, right? If they don't come in excited about it, then why is everybody else going to be excited? I was talking to our incoming master about his calendar for next year, and I go, look, if you're not going to be excited about your own calendar, how are you going to convince everybody else at the lodge to want to show up and be excited about it as well? So don't put anything in your calendar that you're not going to be excited about. And we do have those traditional events every year, like every lodge does. So look at them and see how you can make them exciting. You don't have to get rid of them, just figure the twist that makes them exciting and connect that committee of guys that will be able to pull that off. But again, if you're not excited about it, what's going to make the rest of your lodge excited to participate? And that is your role as their senior officers to create that excitement and not make it monotonous, boring, and an uninspiring thing. Because you're also not only doing it for your brothers at the lodge, but you're also doing it for that future candidate that comes to visit your lodge and might want to join. And if you guys are just sitting there all bored, then why would you want to join the lodge? They're going to be like, well, I guess this is what Masonry is about, just sitting around being bored. They're not. So how do you, as the senior officers, make this a viable, vibrant lodge that you want to be at? Like, make it exciting that you want to be there your once, twice a week because you love being there, not because you have to be there. And if the senior officers can get on the same page with that, then you will have lodges opening up with excitement and fanfare and more brothers wanting to take part of it because they realize what they really missed. And that is that brotherly connection that they had at their lodge and the fun things that they do together.
That is very good advice to all the worshipful masters and senior officers watching this. In Ontario, anywhere really, but especially in Ontario, as we slowly but surely begin the process of kind of reopening our lodges. Worshipful sir, thank you so much for joining me from Southern California. I look forward to being in your neck of the woods soon. I got going to see Brother Barry Mann receive his Hiram Award from Clarence F. Smith Daylight Lodge, and then also get the chance to visit some other friends and some other brothers in the area. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you for having me. I look forward to your visit.